Karen Reed and her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, were bar hopping on a snowy night in Massachusetts. At the end of the night, they were invited to a house party at the home of a fellow officer in Canton, Massachusetts. When Karen and John arrived, Karen did not exit the car. John did. From that point forward, there are two very different versions of what happened. Prosecutors say Karen was mad at John and purposely struck him with her car and left him on the ground to die in the snow. But Karen and her defense team say John went to the party. Something terrible happened inside the house, and his body was placed outside, where he was found dead the next morning. Karen has been charged with murder, but claims she is the victim of a big cover-up by police. The battle inside the courtroom and outside the courthouse has been intense. Prosecutors insisting Karen Reed is a murderer, while she insists it was someone inside the house that night who is responsible for what happened to her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. Tonight, we bring in our own independent experts to examine the evidence in this case piece by piece as we try to figure out what happened to Officer John O'Keefe. I'm Vinny Politan. Great to have you with us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And let me tell you, things are brewing up in Massachusetts in this case. This is heated, to say the least. I mean, anytime we do this story or anyone does this story, everyone is reacting, sending emails, texting. Everyone is just so hyper-focused on everything that transpires here. And then something extremely unusual happened. We had an angry DA who posted a statement, carefully crafted statement so he doesn't violate any ethical rules, which he did not. But a statement nonetheless where he is angry at those who are going after innocent victims of, members of the family and witnesses in the case. A lot of it happening on the internet, some of it happening outside the courthouse, on the courthouse steps. But he posted a video and he was extremely angry about the way these witnesses and the victim's family and friends were being treated by people, a lot of them local, on the internet, talking about this case. And say they are 100% innocent. They are presumed innocent, just like every criminal defendant. But that's what makes this case so different, is that it seems that the shoe is like on the other foot to a certain extent. It's rare that we see people protesting the prosecution at the courthouse. A huge crowd of people led by the man you see right there. He was on the show. Goes by the name Turtle Boy. Local social media personality with a growing following, talking about this case over and over again and kind of striking a nerve with a lot of people. I had him on the show to explain, why are you protesting? Why are you doing this? He's not connected to anyone in the show, but he said, in the trial, but he said he thinks there's an injustice here. But the people that he's protesting are getting a little angry and fed up, and it goes back and forth, because they all believe that Karen Reed is a murderer. He doesn't. Neither does Karen Reed. As a matter of fact, Karen Reed believes that she's a victim in all of this, a victim of this police cover-up. Now, the DA was angry about that too, talking about what, a conspiracy between all these different departments and all these different people? What? To frame her? But that's what she believes. That she did nothing wrong, and it was someone in that house. Remember, it was an after-hours police party that night. So the defense has been on the offensive. It's not just that they're saying, no, they can't prove this case. They're saying, no, we know something happened inside that house, and we need to get that evidence. I mean, and you'll see in the trial, and we'll show this jury. The defense is even saying there shouldn't even be a trial. They think the prosecution should just drop the charges. That's not happening. I mean, I heard the DA. He's seen all the evidence. He believes his evidence is strong enough to win this case, and he's convinced. But the question is, what does this evidence actually show? Now, some of it has been released through statements in court hearings and everything else, and we're going to go through that evidence piece by piece tonight. Going to bring in our own experts to try to get a better understanding. Because through all the chatter and the noise between the protesters and the defense attorneys and the prosecutor and everyone talking, we're going to just try to shut that out for a night and focus in on some of the evidence, get an independent look at it to see what it means, what questions still need to be answered, and try to get a little closer to what the truth may be in this case. But it may be very difficult, because the more you look at it, the more you're like, well, I don't know what exactly is happening here. So let's go through some of the facts of what happened that night and who was involved. So let's bring in our friend in Los Angeles, California, senior reporter for DailyMail.com, the host of Daily Mail Crime on TikTok, and a victim advocate for Project Cold Case, Caitlin Becker, back with us. Caitlin, great to see you tonight. Let's start first with John O'Keefe, Officer John O'Keefe, the victim in all of this, and Karen Reed. I'm trying to get a better understanding of the nature of their relationship and who they were and what was going on in their lives. What's your understanding about who these two are, what was going on generally in their lives?
Well, Vinny, they have a really long history. They had actually dated in their 20s and lost touch and then reconnected more than a decade or so later through social media and then started dating again. So they have quite a few years, under their belt, just being in each other's lives and being together. And their relationship had transpired in a way where things were good for a little while, and then they seemed not so great. And in the weeks leading up to O'Keefe's death, it seemed that their relationship had gotten a little bit rocky. There was a fight around New Year's Eve. There were some issues with the family and how O'Keefe took care of his sister's children or his relatives' children. At first, she loved that, and then it became kind of Karen Reed's responsibility. So things do seem a little rocky by the time we get to the end of January.
Okay, so let's go to the end of January and let's talk about that night. We've got a little bit of a timeline I want to walk through with you to try to get a better understanding of what generally was happening and what they were doing. We start at 7:37 p.m. John O'Keefe arrives at CF McCarty's in Canton, and then at 8:51, a little more than an hour later, Karen Reed arrives at CF McCarty's. And my guess is CF McCarty's, like a lot of the bars up there, it's where people go to, drink. Looking at it, looks like a nice, like a pub, right?
Mm-hmm, Irish pub.
Nice Irish pub, and it's a night of, it seems like these two are meeting. They didn't go there together. Do we know? I mean, generally just out for drinking, right? Were they out to eat? Were they drinking? Were they celebrating anything, or any of that information?
It appears they were doing a lot of drinking. Some surveillance footage from inside the bar shows in the course of about an hour and a half, Karen Reed having something like 6 or 7 drinks. And this was the first bar they went to. And then they left and they met up with friends at a second bar where they presumably had more drinks. There was a lot of drinking happening this night, and the intention was clearly to do some more, because at the end of that second bar, the group was going to go back to have a little after hours party back at one of their homes. So there seemed to be quite a bit of drinking. The first thing that sticks out to me is there is no way, if these drinks were alcoholic, which we assume they were, that Karen Reed should have been behind the wheel of a vehicle. We see her at the bar, several drinks in the night. There's absolutely no reason she should have been driving a car.
Yeah, and when we first looked at this case and this story, you would think that that's what it would be all about, right? A drunk driving, or an alleged drunk driving accident, but that's not the way it's turned out here. All right, so as you mentioned, at 10:40 p.m., Karen Reed and O'Keefe leave together. They leave CF McCarty's, and about 15 minutes later, they arrive at the Waterfall Bar and Grill, also in Canton. This is interesting because they're hanging out in Canton. He's a Boston police officer, but where all this is happening, it's not Boston, and it's not a case that was investigated by officers that work with John O'Keefe.
No, these are suburbs outside of it. But I do know that up in this community, the law enforcement group is not a huge, widespread thing. I mean, they have a lot of officers up there, but you know how small this, law enforcement can be, and everybody kind of does know everybody. I can't wrap my head around the fact that a bunch of police officers were around and allowed someone who may or may not have been absolutely hammered get behind the wheel of a car. That still sticks out to me as being an issue. It also calls into question for me whether or not Karen Read is a reliable narrator of her own story that night, assuming she was intoxicated.
Yeah. Like, how intoxicated was she? What does she remember? What does she not remember? But again, the charges here are that she did it intentionally, that this was no accident. 12:14 a.m., John O'Keefe texts Jennifer McCabe, "Where to?" Jennifer replies with the address of her brother's house on Fairview Road, which is where this so-called after party is going to take place. 12:31 a.m., Jennifer McCabe texts John O'Keefe, "Hello," when he sees what she believes is Karen Read's black SUV at the residence. This is interesting. So Jennifer McCabe, who's inside the house, I guess perhaps or apparently sees Karen Read and John O'Keefe, at least the car, arrive in front of this home.
That's exactly right. And another text that comes through around this time from Jennifer McCabe is basically giving them directions as to where in the driveway to park. I think it's something along the lines of, pull behind my car or pull behind this vehicle. So presumably the people in the house see that they're there in the driveway looking to park, and the people in the car presumably know that this is the house that they're going to because they were directed where to park. This moment in the timeline is where everything goes off the rails for me, Vinny, because the people in the house say that he never came inside to this party. They never saw him. And then you have Karen Read saying he got out of the car, went in the house, never came back, and never answered her phone calls. I can't believe that no one went outside ever to see where he was. If you see me pull up, Vin, outside of your house and you're expecting me to come inside and all of a sudden I disappear and my car disappears, wouldn't you be concerned? And on the same token, if you and I are driving to a party and you get out of the car to go inside and you don't answer my phone calls or come back to the car, I'm going to get concerned. It didn't seem like anyone was concerned until tomorrow. Till
the next day. And so let's get to 12:40 a.m. Jennifer McCabe texts John O'Keefe, "Pull up behind me," and says she then saw the black SUV move from its initial place to the left side of the property. This is very specific. 12:45 a.m. Jennifer McCabe texts John O'Keefe, "Hello," and then observed the black SUV drive away. So if she's seeing it drive away, does she see it run John O'Keefe over? She's seeing a lot, but she's not seeing that.
She's seeing a lot. She doesn't see John O'Keefe get run over, but where she claims she sees the SUV sort of back up and move is between a fire hydrant and a flagpole, which is what she says. And that will become very important when they find his body the next day near this fire hydrant and flagpole. So she might have actually witnessed him getting run over if he was in fact run over in that moment, and just not have been able to see the moment of impact because of how she was looking out the window and how the car was placed. And as you said, my first guess was perhaps this was an accident, because perhaps allegedly she was drunk behind the wheel. Maybe she just backed up, didn't notice she hit him, and then drove off and had no idea until the next day. But as you said, the accusations are that there was a fight and that this was done intentionally, and that Karen Read left him for dead in the cold, knowing that she had run him over.
And we go back to the timeline now. It gets even more interesting. At 4:53 a.m., Karen Read calls Jennifer McCabe looking for John O'Keefe. Jennifer and Karen and another woman drive to John's house, right, the house where the party was, and then back, or no, to John's house, to John O'Keefe's house, and then back to the Fairview house, where then they find John O'Keefe in the snow. So when they had first gotten there, it was lightly snowing, but then I guess it snowed all night, and he's in the snow at that point. 6:04, 911 call reporting John O'Keefe was found in the snow. So as I'm looking at this, it seems like Jennifer McCabe is crucial to establishing for a jury what she saw and what happened that night versus whatever the defense is going to say happened that night.
Absolutely. She's not only crucial for the prosecution about what the state says she witnessed that night, but she is potentially crucial for the defense, because the defense claims that at something like 2:27 a.m., Jennifer Googles something along the lines of how long to die in the snow. And then they allege that she went and covered her tracks and then erased this search. At 2:30 in the morning, no one has any idea that John O'Keefe is laying for dead outside in the snow. So why would she have any reason to Google such a thing? And then why erase it at a later date if that is, in fact, what she looked up? And here lies the conspiracy theory. Here lies, I think, the crux of what the defense is saying went wrong in this situation. And they say that John O'Keefe went into this party, that there was a fight, there was an altercation. He got into a fight with Jennifer McCabe, allegedly with the owner of the house, her brother-in-law, that his dog got involved somehow, and that they all worked to cover it up.
Wow.
It's wild. I don't know what to
It's
think.
absolutely wild because both sides are so convinced of what they are arguing. I could see it in their eyes. I could tell sometimes when defense attorneys are, grain of salting it, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. That's not the case here. These guys believe it, as does the angry prosecutor as well. Caitlin Becker, dailymail.com. Great to have you on tonight. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon. Okay, so what we're going to do when we come back, we're going to bring in our experts. We've got some great ones and go through the evidence piece by piece. What does it mean? What makes sense here? Plus, coming up next hour. In Walterboro, South Carolina, Rita Pangalangan was honored as Teacher of the Year in 2014, someone who dedicated her professional life to helping children. But now she's accused of abusing and murdering her own special needs daughter, Christina, inside a hot car.
What type of food did you give her?
I was told to give her Ensure nutrition drinks.
Anything else other than that?
No, not at the time.
Were there groceries in the house?
No, sir.
Just the Ensure drinks?
Mm-hmm. And I think there was a pitcher of Kool-Aid in there, maybe in the fridge.
A victim with celebrity ties from Stormy Daniels to once being engaged to Drew Carey.
Now her alleged killer faces a jury.
The Hollywood Obsession Murder Trial. Trial coverage weekdays at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
These are the cases that captivated the world.
Can keep my life straight.
They were killed by their own children.
Court TV Legendary Trials. Go to courttv.com/legendary trials to find out how to watch.
Undisputed fact number one. On January 29th, 2022, Officer John O'Keefe was found dead in the yard of Brian Albert at his house at 34 Fairview in Canton. That is undisputed fact, where he was found dead and what the circumstances were surrounding that death are why we're here now. Second undisputed fact, when John O'Keefe was found, he had this set of wounds on his right arm.
What do those wounds mean? What do those wounds mean? Prosecutor's saying that's evidence of him getting run over. The defense is saying, no, that's like from a dog that was inside the house where they say John O'Keefe was murdered. This is an unreal story. So we're going to go through the evidence piece by piece, going to bring in the experts in just a second. But first, let's take a listen from the prosecution's case report, the findings made during the autopsy in this case. Let's listen.
On January 31st, Dr. Irini Scortibello from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner conducted the autopsy of Mr. O'Keefe. The doctor advised the troopers that she observed several abrasions to the victim's right forearm, 2 swollen black eyes, a small cut above the right eye, a cut to the left side of the nose, an approximately 2-inch laceration to the back right of his head, and multiple skull fractures that resulted in bleeding of the brain. Dr. Scordi-Bello further advised the troopers that the victim's pancreas was a dark red color indicating hypothermia, was a contributing factor to his death. Dr. Scordi-Bello opined from her examination that the significant blunt force trauma injuries occurred prior to Mr. O'Keefe becoming hypothermic, as evidenced by hemorrhaging in his pancreas and stomach. Mr. O'Keefe had arrived at the Good Samaritan Medical Center with a body temperature reading in the low 80s. The doctor opined that the extensive injuries to his head likely rendered Mr. O'Keefe incapacitated.
What does all that mean? Let's bring in our experts. We've got a great panel tonight. In Cope, South Carolina, expert witness from the Alec Murdaugh trial, currently Chief Deputy of the Orangeburg County Sheriff's Office. You recognize him, Dr. Kenny Kinsey of Kenny Kinsey and Associates. Joining us in Barrington, Rhode Island, board-certified forensic pathologist Dr. Priya Banerjee. In Jacksonville, Alabama, forensic death investigator, professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, host of the very popular Body Bags podcast, Joseph Scott Morgan. And in Salt Lake City, Utah, retired police commander, host of Profiling Evil on YouTube, Mike King. Whew, great to see everyone. Guys, I'm just going to go ladies first. I'm sorry. We'll start with Dr. Priya Banerjee. We just went through these autopsy results. As you listen to them and you look at the results here, is it consistent with someone being struck as someone is backing up a car?
Well, I think, you know, it really depends on the body conformation, the body position, but potentially that forearm could be a pattern from the car, from a car part. But I think really what it shows is that, I mean, that's not typical for a dog bite. Usually you have like the canine punctures and then small marks from the...
How about a canine scratch?
I still think that's less likely.
Gotcha.
I've seen various dog bites, and I think, I mean, if you mean canine scratch from his nails or from his teeth, maybe from the nails, but I still think they're too close together.
How about the multiple skull fractures? The multiple skull fractures.
That's really where the money is. That's the really most concerning part. The skull is not going to fracture without a significant impact. So whether he's hit somewhere else and falls and hits his head, or is run over and that's causing the skull fractures and the laceration, you're getting the black eyes from blood draining from the inside. It's not from being punched in the face. So really, we call those raccoon eyes. You see that, like, it's a medical term where emergency personnel, you know, anybody who deals with trauma knows, oh my gosh, this is a critical injury because there's a basilar skull fracture. So the base of the skull is crushed. It has, and all that blood's leaking down. That in and of itself is, I mean, can be lethal. Obviously, he survived a little bit for the rest of his body to be stressed in the cold weather. And those hypothermia findings are non-specific, like we see them, we don't. But all in all, I would have to agree that there was an element of hypothermia.
Joseph Scott Morgan, what does your gut tell you on the level of these injuries and the allegations here that there's a drop-off and then she backs into him with the right rear part of the truck? It's an SUV.
Yeah, this SUV, I think that it's significant. Also, you've got a broken tail light that's in play here.
Oh, we're going to get there. We'll get to the broken tail light.
I didn't mean to. I'm not intending to bury the lead here, Ben, but this is significant because one of the reports reads that he was holding a glass and that they found shards of glass that may have been embedded in the bumper. And back to the doctor's point just a moment ago, relative to these injuries that you're seeing, you know, one of the things that we look for in pedestrian strikes with motor vehicle accidents is we look for something called bumper marks. Generally, you see them on the leading edge of a car. If somebody is standing erect and they're trying to cross the street, one of the things that you see is that they're struck, generally around the knees, that sort of thing. Ben, he doesn't have any insults, it sounds like, really inferior to his hips. Everything is kind of taking place up above that, it would almost give you potentially the indication that he was in an asymmetrical position relative to this vehicle, with this vehicle potentially towering over him as she's impacting him. I think that that's kind of significant. And the scratches on the arms, I'm fascinated by this because it's cold weather, Vin, as you have well stated. He would have had layered clothing on, Vin. So this is not something, these injuries, I know the head trauma requires a tremendous amount of force, but this could very well be consistent with almost a rollover type event where the vehicle is running over him to generate this through a layer of clothing. However, we are absent one key piece here. We don't know how he was clothed at this point. So that's going to be significant.
That's going to be significant. All right. Let's take a look here, Dr. Kinsey. Evidence found near O'Keefe's body, okay? So he's in that front yard area. The snow has fallen down. As Joseph Scott Morgan was saying, they located a broken cocktail-style glass and multiple patches of red that appeared to be blood in the vicinity of where the body had been located. The Canton officers secured the glass and 6 blood samples from the snow as evidence. We also have to note that his cell phone was found underneath his body, not in a pocket, but loose and under his body. Dr. Kinsey, putting the pieces together that we have so far, what is it telling you?
Well, Vinny, I got to agree with the fine doctor and certainly the professor. Both of them have great points. And looking at those injuries on the victim, things I noticed was their uniform and they're very symmetric. I'm agreeing with doctor and professor. I believe we may have the victim down, and I would start looking for something under that vehicle that can make those injuries, because they don't look like an animal injury to me, and certainly they are uniform to the trained eye. So I'd start looking under that vehicle and see what kind of evidence I have, and maybe they have that. Maybe that's what they're banking on in this, but that is where I would have started.
Okay, let's take a look at the Lexus SUV, Mike King. They observed fragments of broken glass on the rear bumper of the vehicle. The rear right passenger side tail light was shattered, and pieces were observed missing from the red and clear areas. On the right side of the rear tailgate, a deep scratch and minor dent were observed. On the right side of the rear bumper, above a small red light, 2 scratches were observed, and one area where paint was chipped off. Does that sound like that could happen from striking and killing John O'Keefe?
Absolutely, and I think that's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, is the fact that there is physical evidence that supports that there was a collision between that vehicle and some object, and his body happens to have a whole bunch of damage to it. I'm a kid from the Utah mountains, Vinny. I know what it's like in the snow, and I know how easy it would have been for him to slip or fall and that car to roll under him, and I'm really looking forward to what forensics they might recover from underneath that vehicle. Doesn't look like dog bites to me, and it certainly fits the scenario, but they got to answer the elephant in the room. How did that broken glass get there? How did that cocktail glass get embedded in the bumper? How did that vehicle end up leaving the scene of an accident? Because I'm sure they're going to be able to compare that broken glass and that vehicle together.
All right, let me throw a little curveball at everyone when it comes to that right rear tail light. Here's Karen Reed's defense attorney showing another piece of evidence that they uncovered. Take a look.
The taillight was intact when she left Brian Albert's house. She came home, and this was Karen leaving to begin the frantic search for John O'Keefe. Now, I don't know that you can see it from the video that you have there, but there is no doubt that when that SUV comes into contact with what is John O'Keefe's vehicle parked in the driveway, you can see that rear tire move forward. It rotates, and you also see the light shatter from the taillight being broken.
All right, What do you think of that? So they've got at 5 a.m., so this is after the drop-off. She's already gone home. Now she's going back to try to find John O'Keefe. That's her story. She backs into John's car in the driveway, and we see John's car shake. Who wants this one? Who wants it?
The lights look uniform to me as
Vinny.
she pulls away.
I
don't see any
glass.
I don't see any kind of physical disruption.
Okay, so you don't think that's what caused the damage here? Dr. Kinsey, you don't think so either?
No, sir, Vinny. That looked to me like bumper to bumper, and it was such low impact. I didn't, at least with my eyes, I did not see any broken taillight lens.
And you agree, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see any glass fall into the ground there. And how are they going to respond to this? If forensically they tie that glass to sitting where O'Keefe's body is recovered, that's going to be a tall mountain to climb.
We shall see. All right, big thank you, Dr. Priya Banerjee. Appreciate your time tonight. The rest of the crew is staying with us. We've got more evidence to go through piece by piece tonight as we try to figure out what happened to Officer John O'Keefe.
I was awakened by my brother screaming.
Pounding on the door, bang, bang, bang.
People don't realize human beings like that can exist in the world.
He said that we'd seen his face and there was no way that he could ever let us go.
They were not going to let me go easily.
You better fight and you better get out of here.
I survived because I'm a born fighter.
I Survived, tonight at 10/9 Central on Court TV.
Location data from his phone, recovered from the lawn beneath his body when he was transported to the hospital, shows that this phone did not enter that home.
The DA clearly stating the location data in John O'Keefe's phone, which again was found beneath his body outside on the lawn, shows that he did not go in the house. Okay? Now, the defense says they don't have all of the information from prosecutors yet, but they do have information about his Apple Health data on the phone for John O'Keefe. They're on my show. Here's what they say about the phone evidence in this case.
The Apple Health data that Alan referenced earlier shows that he did walk, I think, approximately 80 steps and went up and down approximately 3 flights of stairs. You don't do that by getting out of a vehicle and being struck by the vehicle.
So what gives here? Let's bring back in our experts. Dr. Kenneth Kinsey is still with us, as is, of course, Joseph Scott Morgan and Mike King. So, Dr. Kinsey, I'll start with you. You've got location data. Prosecutor says did not go in the house, but yet the defense says the Apple Health data is saying he took 80 steps. He's going up and down the stairs. What gives here?
Well, Vinny, you know, we've seen that phone evidence before in a real close county to where I'm sitting right now, and it's always subjective. You can find, you know, one bit of data on one source, and it may not be in line or may not agree with the other source. So I believe it's however it's presented, analyzed and presented, and, you know, let that jury weigh in on it.
What are your thoughts, Joseph Scott Morgan, when it comes to this phone data? We know how significant this is, and we know in the trial where Dr. Kinsey was the star witness, how specific the evidence was about where Alec Murdaugh was. I could like picture him walking around. It was such a great testimony in that case. What do you think here when the Apple Health is talking about 80 steps, up and down 3 flights of stairs? The defense is going to argue that he was going down in the basement. There's a lot of stuff happening down there during this after party. What are your thoughts?
Okay, well, I'll put it to you this way. Contrary to what we might think in the world in which we indwell nowadays, phones are, in fact, inanimate objects. They don't move on their own. So how are you going to put that phone into his hand necessarily? And I think that can be argued, and any sharp attorney could make that argument as well. You know, how can it be stated that he was physically holding that phone as it moved about? And that's, that's the big point of contention here. Yes, the phone is moving about, but how do you place it actually into this gentleman's hand to facilitate that movement? And I think that that's a question that could be asked before the jury, and it's certainly something that would be quite thought-provoking.
Mike King, your thoughts about the conflict of this phone evidence? I think it's so significant in this case because I was so convinced by what happened down in Low Country.
Well, Kenny and Joe are both absolutely correct in two areas. One, and the one thing that I want to say is that that phone physically has to move around, and you got to be able to talk about it. But there is a thing called cellular drift, and when you're talking broadband, Vinny, things get really tricky here. A horizontal location, like Dr. Kinsey saw in the Murdoch case, is one thing. Being able to say he walked from this point to this particular point. When you start bringing into it a vertical axis and you start looking at that Z coordinate, things get a lot dicier. And it's going to take, for even a pretty good signal, it's going to take one satellite that's exactly overhead and about three that are surrounding that to bring that triangulated and then quadrated information together to say, yeah, I think it's in about this area. But all the experts agree that vertical change could be anywhere from 35 to 70 feet. That's close to 7 stories. So you got to really take into account that, think about an airplane pilot when they go in and they set the barometer on their airplane. That's going to tell them whether they're going to fly into a mountain or not, because weather can change it. The interior of a building can change elevation. All of that can be something that could impact this. And so this isn't an easy answer, and it is going to take the experts to get in and really dice this out and help a jury understand. And frankly, 70 feet's an awfully big area to try to compensate for.
All right, it's a big, big issue. Okay, everyone stay where you are. When we come back, I've got something else you need to know about this case, plus coming up next hour. In DeKalb County, Georgia, Quenisha Johnson was found not guilty of murder, but convicted of the voluntary manslaughter of her boyfriend. She was sentenced to prison by the judge, but is still walking around free. How did her lawyer, Michael Sterling, make that happen? Tonight, we find out.
I mean, they say people show no remorse. I'm very remorseful. It's because I don't sit there and tear, cry, and I can't cry on cue. I'm mentally disturbed. I'm disturbed and whole,
A victim with celebrity ties from Stormy Daniels to once being engaged to Drew Carey.
Now her alleged killer faces a jury.
The Hollywood Obsession Murder Trial. Trial coverage weekdays at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
These are the cases that captivated the world.
Can keep my life straight. They were killed by their own children.
Court TV Legendary Trials. Go to courttv.com/legendary trials to find out how to watch.
Welcome back. I've got something else you need to know about this case, but what are we hearing right now from our experts as we go through the evidence? It seems everything is consistent, very consistent with the theory of the prosecution. That the car struck John O'Keefe, the car that Karen Reed was driving. Well, now let's take a look at something else you need to know about this case, folks. It's a Google search. How long to die in cold? How long to die in cold? Is this the smoking gun? Is this the smoking Google? Alan Jackson, the attorney for Karen Reed, explains the significance of this search.
Why is Jennifer McCabe one of the parties that was inside the house that night, the sister-in-law of Brian Albert? Why was she Google searching? How long does it take for a human body to die in the cold? The Apple Cocoa core data indicates, or the core time indicates exactly what time that Google search occurred. That time was at 2:27 and 40 seconds in the morning on January 29th. That's 3.5 hours before John O'Keefe's body was found.
All right. All right. Let's, I'm going to start with Mike King on this one. Google search, 2:27. I mean, shouldn't we all be able to agree what time a Google search is done? It seems like there's a disagreement here. Otherwise, I mean, Jennifer McCabe is Googling how long to die in cold, perhaps at 2:27.
Yeah, and we've heard some evidence that suggests that maybe she was instructed to look that up. But bottom line is, how did that happen? And then I guess the bigger question to me, Vinny, is why was it deleted? And that certainly casts a lot of question. And this one is going to boil down to the totality of the evidence. And I'll tell you, when things like this happen, it sure makes it a lot brighter for the defense.
It does. Joseph Scott Morgan, what are your thoughts? You know, Google searches, we see them in cases all the time. It's this digital evidence that is so significant. If someone inside the house is Googling how long to die in the cold at 2:27 and 40 seconds, that I have no explanation. I have no innocent explanation for that.
Yeah, it's very, very hard to explain, you know, and particularly for it doesn't matter what any of us on this panel think. What really is important here is how is this going to be presented to the jury, Vin? And all of the members of this jury live in this environment. You know, Mike is the outlier here for us tonight. He's the fellow that's had exposure to really cold weather. You know, we're down here in the deep South, but you know, when you begin to think about the impact, they understand because that's the environment that they live in. They know what a lethal environment this is. Why would someone want to seek that particular information out at that particular time on a night when I think that many of us can agree, and the medical examiner also opined that they believe that hypothermia actually played a role in the death of this man, in addition to this massive head trauma that he sustained. As a matter of fact, the cold may have sustained him for a little bit longer as opposed to have been in more temperate weather that particular time. It slowed down the process, but either way, he died later at the hospital.
Dr. Kinsey, what were your thoughts about this Google search? Do you think it's potentially that prosecutors will prove that it was done at a different time and that you're going to have experts saying Google searches are at different times? I mean, to me, I've never seen that in a trial.
Vinny, it definitely has a nefarious tone to it. And I believe we're going to see that this is going to be one of the largest hurdles that the prosecution is going to have to overcome. And, you know, they probably know parts of the nuances of the electronic and computer evidence that we don't have, but I look for this to be possibly a game changer. However, throwing rocks at everyone, it does not work well in front of a jury, at least with my experience. So, you know, the defense has to be really, really careful about whose name they drag through the mud. But, you know, they have a job. They have to zealously defend their client. And I've seen it before, and I'm sure the fine commander and the professor have as well.
You know, Mike, as I look at that statement, and I always look at evidence this way, you know, DNA and other evidence, like if Karen Reed had Googled that, that would be the headline for prosecutors, right? If she Googled that, that would be their headline. So I'm trying to understand if it comes out in front of this jury that it was at 2:27, this is almost a game over kind of thing.
Well, unless they're able to bring in the other evidence that explains it. And some of that we're starting to see a hand tipped here and there that maybe she was encouraged to look that up. Who was she encouraged by?
But who's encouraging her to look that up? At 2:27. At 2:27, she's with her brother-in-law and everybody else at that party, while John O'Keefe is laying outside dying.
Yeah, and I might be wrong, Vinny, but it seems to me like I heard somewhere along the line that she was contacted by Reed through a text or something to talk about this. And I could be completely off base
That's
here.
later on in the morning. I think it's later on in the morning is when that happens. And that's when the alleged confession comes through and everything else, where she says, did I hit him? I think I may have hit him. Could I have hit him? So that would make sense if the timestamp makes sense, but the contact isn't until like 5 o'clock in the morning between Karen and Jennifer McCabe. So I don't know, but what a great job tonight. Dr. Kenneth Kinsey, great to catch up with you. Joseph Scott Morgan, Mike King. Listen, I feel like Mr. T and the A-team here. This is awesome. See you guys really, really soon.